have a journey through some of the major developments in technology in India. But we first need to understand what we mean by technology, because the definition of today, which is the application of scientific knowledge to the practical aims of human life, I mean, this is one of the definitions. That is to say, technology is applied science. In the ancient world, anywhere in the world, it's just the opposite. Technology is not applied science. It develops before science, and then science comes along and tries to explain technology. That's how it happens. You make stone tools without having a theory of mineralogy. You make metal objects without having a theory of metallurgy. The theory comes later on. But today, somewhere along the line, things have reversed, and you cannot fabricate a cell phone without a whole theory of, radio transmission and semiconductors and et cetera, et cetera. So the definition is very different in the ancient world. And in fact, if you look at the very first evidence of technology in India, you have to go back a few million years, because that is stone technology, stone tools. And some have been found in what is today northern Pakistan, in Maharashtra, very recently in Atirampakkam near Tamil Nadu, where we have some rigorous dates floating between 1.2, 1.4, and 2 million years at these various sites. So this is the first evidence of human activity in the subcontinent, but of course not our human species, not Homo sapiens, which is datable to much later. Homo sapiens, there's still a bit of controversy as to when Homo sapiens really entered India. Was it 80,000 BC? Was it 50,000 BC? Somewhere between those two dates anyway. So much, much later. So this is not Homo sapiens. This is another Homo, possibly Homo erectus, but Homo erectus itself is a big debate anyway among the anthropologists. I cannot go into all this. The physical evidence of Homo sapiens in South Asia is from Sri Lanka about 35,000 years ago. But from genetic studies, at the least, we know that Homo sapiens was settled earlier. It's just that the evidence has not come across. Then, you see, if I jump happily over these 2 million years or so, and I come to something much more close to our times, we reach the so-called Upper Paleolithic era, which takes us to about Upper Paleolithic means anything between 50,000 and 10,000 years ago. And then we have some kind of a technical revolution where suddenly the stone tools become much more refined, and there are also new techniques of chipping stones which will create microliths, small stone implements, in particular microblades, small blades, which are very fine flakes of hard stone which are sharpened and which permit a whole lot of new activities like scraping skins, cutting, etc. So, every new function of a stone tool immediately opens up new possibilities. And we may think that this is all very primitive, but I can tell you that of course, the lifestyle was very primitive according to our standards. Nevertheless, these techniques of stone tool making, were extremely sophisticated. In fact, it takes a lot of time for archaeologists or paleontologists to understand and replicate, and they have to make a lot of studies about the angle by which the stone is hit with what other stone, etc. We have in India a few people. I know one of them, Dr. Akhilesh Kumar in Chennai, who is working with Dr. Shanti Papu. Both of them excavated the site of Atirampakkam, and he conducts what he calls napping workshops. Napping workshops are not workshops where you take a nap. They are workshops where you learn to nap a stone, which is K-N-A-P. And he has himself mastered, and he can produce perfect replicas of the stone tools which were manufactured 2 million years ago, or 1.57 million years ago at Atirampakkam. So this takes a lot of research and effort. So therefore, these were already, what we can call traditions, technological traditions. They were skills which were passed, which could not have been discovered in a single or refined in a single generation or two, they were transmitted and they were coming to this stage. And then, of course, after this transition, which is called the Mesolithic, between the Paleolithic and the Neolithic, and this is a transition which is called by a phase of global warming, of course, natural global warming. About 10,000–12,000 years ago, the climate, as you know, the ice age, the last ice age ended, and then the climate warmed up all over the earth. And by warming up, it freed a lot of new areas for agriculture, you know, and humans so far had been nothing but hunters and gatherers. They had been on the move always. They had never settled anywhere except for short periods, and they had never practiced agriculture. There's no trace so far, could happen, of agriculture anywhere on earth, to my knowledge, before 8000 BC. In India, we find the first evidence of agriculture at Mehergarh, and agriculture is a technology. It's in fact a very vital technology, and very, which becomes very complex because it depends on the climate, it depends on the local environment, it depends on the kind of crops that you wish to have, it depends on the season of the year where you want to plant and so on. So we have barleys and millets in Balochistan, Mehergarh, and then about the same time possibly, according to recent research, in the Ganges Valley, in this very region where we are now, more than 9,000 years ago, humans started cultivating rice. And there's still a bit of controversy whether this was wild rice that they were harvesting or domesticated rice, but according to Virbar Sahani Institute of Paleobotany in Lucknow, this was, and the archaeologists who excavated there, in particular Rakesh Tiwari, with K.S. Saraswat, Dr. K.S. Saraswat, very eminent paleobotanist in India, you find in various sites, which you can see here in Allahabad, Sant Kabir Nagar districts and others, examples of grains, and these are the grains which have been taken from the site. This grain, of course, is collected because it has been accidentally charred. It has been burnt. Otherwise, of course, it would have long decayed. This is, you know, when you cook, some grain is going to spill into the fire, and that's how archaeologists can gather ancient grain of various kinds, and this happens to be rice. So in any case, once you settle down, you know, why should you settle down first of all? Actually, the life of a hunter and gatherer is a pretty good life, because there is no dearth of, you know, animals to be hunted, no dearth of forest fruits, no dearth of water, no dearth of honey. You can easily, especially in the Indian climate, much more difficult would be the case of European climates. But the Indian climate, it would have been very easy to remain at that stage. So people basically settle down because the population grows. After the end of the Ice Age, populations start expanding. And because they expand, you can't keep moving big populations, so they explore ways to maybe settle down and start cultivation, and this is what they do. And then you find those settlements very rudimentary initially, but then you see one technology leads you to another, and you get caught in a vicious circle, which probably, you know, leads us to what we are today, and God knows what it will be in 500 years. Maybe we will be back to the Stone Age in 500 years. That's possible. Nobody can tell. But anyway, these technologies succeed each other. For example, when you start practicing agriculture, you want to carry water, you want to store grain. You have to, storing grain becomes vital because you have to keep for the next harvest, the next sowing season. And you have also you start cooking what you harvest. It's not as if you are, you know, like previously eating what you collect. So for all these reasons, pots, you know, the humans start using clay to make pots. Initially, they are very crude pots. They are just handmade, and they are more or less well-baked, etc. These are some pots from 6000 BC or so, between 6 and 5000 BC. Same days, interestingly, at Mehergarh in Balochistan, and in the Ganges Valley. More or less the same dates. And actually more or less the same dates in other parts of the world, except that China and Japan both have reported pottery all the way to 14,000, 15,000 BC. So these are exceptions. There's a Jamun culture in Japan which has reported the dates like 15,000 BC, things like that, for pottery. So, but otherwise, in other parts of the world, you will get similar dates.